All right, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you can hear me okay. We are going to look at a new video that was just released uh, that Mrs. Nancy Guthrie was never kidnapped and she was killed 72 hours before or 72 hours after the kidnapping. You guys will have to make your own choice on that. So let's watch this video, and it's very possible that that's what happened. Something other than what we were told uh, is different than what the evidence is showing. So let's take a look at it real quick. Hello, Miss Fox. Okay, this was just released an hour ago, not even 2 hour, maybe at the most. Shocking. Nancy Guthrie's body revealed. She never was kidnapped, but killed 72 hours and left within 5 miles of her property. So let's let's listen to this.
Seeing each other. They didn't.
This case that once you hear it, you will not be able to unhear it. It's not the $6 million Bitcoin ransom demand. It's not the $1 million family reward. It's not the 13,000 tips the FBI has received. It's not even the 400 investigators who were assigned to this case at its peak. The number is 72, as in hours. A retired detective, a man who built his career on missing person and abduction cases, who founded the NYPD's Canine Unit, just said publicly, on the record in an exclusive interview, that Nancy Guthrie likely died within the first 72 hours of her disappearance. 3 days. I'm not going to tell you his full reasoning yet, because to understand why that number matters and to really understand it, you need to walk through the same evidence he walked through. You need to see the medical data. You need to hear what a cardiologist said about what happens when you take an 84-year-old woman off her heart medication without warning. You need to understand what a former FBI agent and CIA officer concluded about what was inside that backpack. And then you need to look at a map, because the same expert who said 72 hours also said something about distance. And here is the part that made me stop and reread his words 3 times. Every single piece of physical evidence recovered in this case, the gloves, the search warrants, the surveillance footage, the DNA, the canvas radius, all of it falls inside the exact window he described. That could be a coincidence, or it could be the moment this case starts making a very different kind of sense. Let's go. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. She lives on a rural property in the Catalina foothills just north of Tucson, Arizona. CNN described it as a secluded location. No streetlights, few neighbors, limited surveillance. On January 31st, Nancy's family took her home from dinner around 9:30 or 9:45 p.m. Sheriff Chris Nanos described her as mentally sharp, sharp as a tack. But physically, she was fragile. Limited mobility, constant pain, a pacemaker, daily medication for a heart condition. And here,
I think she was strong enough to fight back. Right? If she was startled out of her sleep or whatever, say the guy was standing over her, right? I think maybe she would have fought back. She couldn't move too much lower, on her legs or whatever. But I think she would have at least made the attempt to if somebody was hurting her, try to block, you know, this person from attacking. Because they say she was pretty alert, you know. She didn't lose her mind.
here is the detail that will define everything that follows. Sheriff Nanos confirmed publicly that going without Nancy's medication for more than 24 hours could be fatal, not could be dangerous, not could cause complications. Fatal. Hold on to that number, 24 hours, because the man I'm about to introduce you to says she had 72 dis, and that was generous. Sometime after midnight on February 1st, someone arrived at Nancy's house. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera went offline. The masked figure captured in later released footage is seen covering the camera with vegetation pulled from the yard. This person knew the camera was there. They knew it needed to go dark. At 2:12 a.m., 25 minutes later, another camera inside the home detected what it classified as a person, but no video was recorded. At 2:28 a.m., 16 minutes after that, Nancy's pacemaker sent its last signal to her iPhone. The phone was left behind in the house. Nancy was not. Those 41 minutes from 1:47 to 2:28, that is the window. Whatever happened to Nancy Guthrie happened inside those 41 minutes. And on the front porch, the primary entry and exit point of that house, investigators found her blood, confirmed by DNA as Nancy Guthrie's blood. A forensic pathologist who examined photographs of those droplets described their shape as donut-like, small, pale centers, which is characteristic of blood that falls from the nose or mouth because it mixes with air on the way down. He said the pattern was consistent with an injury sustained during an abduction. Nancy bled on her own porch, and then she was gone. That was 31 days ago. And in 31 days, not one person has provided proof she is alive. Not a photograph, not a recording, not a word in her handwriting, nothing. His name is...
Are you researching dental implants?
There's a lot of dental offices that'll talk about doing their teeth in the day process. A lot of times what they need.
He is a former Nassau County lieutenant. He founded the New York Police Department's Canine Unit, the specialized team that is deployed for search and recovery operations.
Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, you didn't see one dog out there, did you? Remember when we were doing that video a couple weeks ago where we were saying, how come we're not seeing dogs out there trying to pick up a scent? If they did walk her out of there and there was a car waiting somewhere a mile away, whatever, not one dog around there sniffing outside that house or anywhere really. That's kind of weird.
Operations in missing person cases. His career was built on finding people who were taken. I need to be clear about what he is not. He is not an FBI profiler. He is not an FBI agent. He is not part of the official investigation. IB Times UK published one of the most detailed analyses of his assessment and stated this explicitly. His view is an outside expert opinion based on his professional background and what is publicly known, rather than on privileged access to case files. But this is not a man speculating from a couch. This is a man who has worked these cases, who has led the teams that go looking, who has been the person standing in the field when the search transitions from rescue to recovery. And he gave an exclusive interview to the Mirror US where he said the two things that, in my view, reframe this entire investigation. The first, sadly, my assessment is that Nancy likely died within the first 72 hours and will ultimately be recovered. Let me break that apart. Sadly. This is not a clinical statement. This is a man who understands what he's saying to a family. My assessment, not a guess, not a theory from Reddit, a professional assessment from a man who has spent decades in exactly this work. Nancy likely died, not may have, not could have, likely, within the...
All right. So what does that tell you? Well, he's probably right. If she was on blood thinners, that was to keep the blood flowing and not clotting up because she bruised very easily and she got blood clots easily. So let's say 72 hours after they take her, she's not on her medication. What happens? She goes in the V-fib. She has a heart attack. That's probably what would happen to her. Her blood would start clotting. If she was banged up or whatever, then blood clots would let loose, and she probably would have a stroke or a heart attack. No, that's true. That's true. Now, I don't know. This little lady is bruised up a lot every time we see her. She's got bruises. I got that. Except you see that. You see that heart-shaped blue diamond around her neck. I do believe I got that same one. I don't know if it's real or not, but that was in a box of garage sale stuff I bought a couple years ago. I wonder if I still got that thing. I'll have to dig around here and see. That's kind of freaky that she has that on. It's a woman's thing. I bought a box of stuff from at a garage sale, and at the bottom of the box there was a whole bunch of stuff, rings, necklaces. Whether they're real or not, I have no idea. I think they're like play jewelry or something. But yeah, she probably would have died. She didn't have her blood thinners to keep her blood real thin so it don't clot up and cause a stroke or a heart attack. It wouldn't have been long after her not taking her medicine. She would have probably passed. Yeah, it's breaking news, Debbie. They came out and saying that the professional gave his opinion on the case and she died within 72 hours of being taken. Even if they didn't kill her, she would have died from not having her heart medication.
First 72 hours, 3 days after January 31st puts us at February 3rd, before the doorbell footage was even released to the public, before the first ransom note arrived at TMZ, before the nation even knew Nancy Guthries' name, and will ultimately be recovered. Not rescued, recovered. That word, from a man who founded a recovery unit, carries the full weight of what it means. He continued, recovery doesn't bring closure. It simply removes the uncertainty of not knowing where she is. And then came the second statement, the one about distance. Historically, victims of abductions are frequently found in relatively close proximity, 2 to 5 miles. Nancy's body will likely be found within a few miles of her home. I want to go through that the same way. Historically, he's not guessing. He's drawing on documented case data, patterns from abductions he has worked and studied across his career. Relatively close proximity, not across state lines, not in another city, not in Mexico, close, 2 to.
Well, and this guy's probably right about that. She's around there somewhere. What they did with her, I don't know. They might have her held up somewhere waiting for it to cool off. Then maybe dispose of the body if they haven't disposed of it already. What are they going to do, folks? Or you think they're going to carry around a dead body everywhere they go to try and keep it hid? It's just too risky. Taking her was way too risky. You know, if it was a robbery. But now you got a lot of stories coming out. Do I think if we go off what they said, she had a pacemaker, she had heart medicine to keep her blood thin, which usually that's what happens when you're on a pacemaker. You get blood clots easily, so they give you blood thinners to thin your blood out from doing that. And if she didn't take her medicine within so long, then I hate to say it, yeah, she probably passed away. No, probably. Her blood pressure would rise. It would start. Her blood would start thickening up, uh, and that probably would affect the pacemaker. I'm not sure. I'm no professional when it comes to pacemakers, but I imagine if her blood started clotting up and getting thicker from not taking the blood thinners, then that probably would have caused a problem. If not a stroke, blood clot going to the brain, a blood clot going to the lungs. That also would have caused what we're seeing on the ground. A blood clot, either being coughed up through the lung, whatever. Now, I agree with this guy. 72 hours after. Yeah, probably. I'm giving that the most. The most, without her heart medication and blood thinner and whatever else she was on. A week, and then she probably would have started having real troubles. But I'm thinking this guy's onto it 72 hours after. But some of us are thinking, did this even really happen when they said it happened and not before? And the whole thing was made up. Whether for publicity, whether it be donations, right? I don't know. Maybe to help the rest of the family out. I hate to say it, but we live in a world where people, even your own family, it happens where they sacrifice you, meaning you lived a long life. You're worth billions. And they choose to get rid of them. I know it sucks. It's sad, but we're literally what happens. Debbie Fox says her grandmother was on blood thinners. Well, then you know how important they are. I'm under attack again, Lord. Trespasser or something. Sending stuff to me. All right, let's continue.
5 miles, a specific radius. He's not saying somewhere in Arizona. He's saying 2 to 5 miles from the house where she was taken. Nancy's body will likely be found within a few miles of her home. The house in the Catalina foothills, the house with the doorbell camera, the house with the blood on the porch, the house her children dropped her at after dinner on January 31st. She didn't go far. That's what he's telling you. She is close. And Gould said one more thing that I haven't shared yet about the odds. Previously, in an earlier interview with the Mirror US, he had estimated there was under 10% chance that Nancy Guthrie was still alive. 10%. That was weeks ago. With his latest statement, he went past even that, giving a specific timeline and geography for what he believes is the inevitable outcome. He also addressed the $1 million reward directly. I believe the reward money is an effort to recover Nancy's body and bring answers to the family, not to rescue her, to recover her body. Those are the words of a man who has seen how these cases end. 2 numbers, 72 hours, 2 to 5 miles. And here is why I believe those numbers deserve your attention more than any other theory that is circulated in this case. Gould didn't pick 72 hours at random. He built it on a medical reality that law enforcement itself has confirmed. Nancy has a pacemaker. She takes daily medication for an undisclosed heart condition. She takes antiarrhythmics, blood thinners, and hypertension medication, according to the Mirror US. Her daughter described her as living in constant pain, even with her medication. And the sheriff of Pima.
Well, all these things are true. Maybe she did something. Maybe, all these people are innocent until proven guilty. But did they get like a Dr. Kevokian or something too? Did she want to pass away? And this is pretty freaky. I don't know, all this medication she was on, if she didn't take it, I wouldn't have gave her longer than a week, and she would have been in pretty bad shape. And Miss Fox is right. When you're on blood thinners, if you cut yourself or get hurt and bleed, it's very hard to stop the bleeding. And that might have been what happened. They damaged Mrs. Guthrie and she bled out. I know it sounds gory. God forgive me for even talking about it, but truth be, either, we're seeing blood. She's on all this medication to thin her blood, heart rhythmia medication. Yeah, if she wasn't on that, folks, she probably was in serious trouble within a couple days. Yeah. And like Miss Fox said, if she was bleeding, then let's say they hit her, punched her, whatever, inside. What if she had a blood clot and all the strain, whatever, it let go? Right? The blood clot travels, it could block somewhere, it could travel to the brain, it could travel to the lungs, and it gets caught in the lungs. What happened? I've seen people cough up blood clots from their lungs. So that's also possible. There's numerous things, but now they're on the right track. We're probably looking for a body. And now this makes it interesting because now we do know that she was on specific medication to thin the blood. And whoever took her would have had to have medication, numerous medications, or would have had to access to them, whether it be from their own mother that had heart troubles. Now, could she be farther than 5 miles? Yes. But she's around there somewhere, within 50 miles or somewhere close. I'd keep looking because it's very possible. I mean, like I said, what are these people going to do? You going to carry a body around with you to hide this? No. Probably these guys got rid of it as fast as they could. They might have hid it for a while until they figured out what they were going to do. She's somewhere around there, hopefully. We all pray she's alive, but not unless somebody planned this whole thing out. And now you got to look at insurance scam, because if Miss Guthrie's missing and there's no body for so long, what do? Declare her dead. And then the insurance money could be paid out.
County said on day 4 of the investigation that going without that medication for more than 24 hours could be fatal. Savannah Guthrie said it herself in an Instagram video. She is 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain, and she is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer. A source close to the family told CNN that Nancy is in grave jeopardy without her medications. Now, Dr. Srihari S. Naidu, a professor of medicine at New York Medical College, spoke exclusively to Parade about what happens when heart patients are suddenly cut off from their medication. He wasn't involved in the case, but his analysis is the most detailed medical breakdown anyone has published. He explained 3 categories of heart medication. The first is preventative, blood thinners that reduce the risk of strokes. Stopping those abruptly isn't immediately fatal. The stroke risk for high-risk patients is about 5% per year. It's not like if you stop that blood thinner, they're going to have a stroke the next day. The second is chronic disease management, is blood pressure medication. Stopping that increases risk, but doesn't guarantee immediate crisis. The third category is the one that matters, medications that actively keep the heart functioning. For those, Dr. Naidu said, the consequences of sudden withdrawal can be immediate and severe. Nobody outside Nancy's family and doctors knows exactly which medications she takes, but the sheriff himself said 24 hours without them could be fatal. That didn't come from a podcast. That came from the man leading the investigation, presumably informed by Nancy's medical records. So here's the math. The sheriff says 24 hours is the danger threshold. Gould says 72 hours is when the outcome becomes unavoidable. That 48-hour gap between 24 and 72 is Gould being generous, accounting for the possibility that Nancy's body held on longer than the minimum estimate, that her heart fought, that the pacemaker assisted as long as it could, but after 72 hours, after 3 days without antiarrhythmics, without blood pressure regulation, without the medications that actively keep a pacemaker-dependent heart functioning, the question stops being whether she survived. The question becomes how long she held on. Today is day 31. That is 744 hours, 31 times the window the sheriff described as potentially fatal. Dr. Naidu also explains something about pacemakers that most people misunderstand, and this matters for the signal sniffer search I'll get to in a moment. A pacemaker does not keep the heart going on its own. It assists. It sends electrical impulses to prevent the heart rate from dropping dangerously low. But if the patient dies, the pacemaker keeps sending those impulses into a heart that is no longer beating. The microcurrents come from the device, not the heart. That's why investigators tried something extraordinary. CBS News reported that law enforcement deployed a tracking device called a signal sniffer, mounted on a helicopter flying slow and low over the Tucson desert to detect possible signals from Nancy's pacemaker. The theory was that even if Nancy had been moved, the pacemaker might still be emitting a detectable signal that could reveal her location. They flew. They searched. They didn't find her. Now think about what Gould's 72-hour timeline means in the context of the real events that followed. If Nancy was taken at approximately 2:28 a.m. on February 1st, and Gould's 72-hour assessment is correct, the window closed around 2:28 a.m. on February 4th. That's a Tuesday morning. The doorbell footage wasn't released to the public until February 10th, 6 days after the window had already closed. The first ransom note arrived at TMZ around February 9th, 5 days after. The $100,000 FBI reward wasn't announced until February 13th. The nation didn't even learn Nancy Guthries' name until days after Gould believes she was already gone. Every ransom demand, every plea video, every reward announcement.
Yep. After that, I think it was a grab for the money. After they realized that this is very sad, because you actually have people coming out saying that they thought she was missing, that they seen her face on a billboard a while back or something. I don't know, maybe it's possible. But even if it's not, it just happened, you know, last month or this month or whatever. It's still pretty sad, you know. And was this little lady a victim of maybe, I don't know. I mean, we've listened to so much stuff. Trouble within the family, wills or houses or whatever, putting people's that one video that came out saying that Tomas signed or had or put something in Nancy's name or something like that. This is all starting to make pretty good sense to me of what we're dealing with. And now people are bringing up that Savannah, the news lady did or reported on, was was the problem. That's why this happened. I don't know. You got people coming out of the woodworks everywhere, right? And the proof was on JLR's channel today. There's already people out there making videos saying that he is the guy. I don't know. No, add him to the list. What do we got now? 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5. 5 people now. 6 people that somehow these guys ended up being suspect in the case. Debbie says, but we know realistically she's not here with us. You know, I don't know. She's probably one tough cookie. If she was married to who she was saying they were married to, or she was, then she's probably one tough cookie. Could she go 30 days without all of her medication? I don't know. If she is still alive, she's one tough cookie. And I keep looking for her.
If Gould is right, all of it was happening after the outcome had already been decided, not by the kidnapper, by biology. Criminal defense attorney Sam Bassett, a Lawyer of the Year winner, added something that made me stop reading. Speaking to the Mirror US about the ransom notes that were sent to media outlets, Bassett said, "The ransom dropping over time, if the demands were from the actual kidnapper, may indicate their desperation and possibly worse if Mrs. Guthrie's health took a turn. Dropping ransom amounts, desperation, a health turn. If Gould is right, whoever sent those notes may have watched the situation deteriorate in real time and had nothing left to bargain with." And here is something that makes this even more disturbing. The first ransom note was sent to TMZ and to 2 Tucson television stations, not to the family, not through a private channel, to media outlets. It demanded $6 million in Bitcoin. It contained no way for the family to respond, no return email, no phone number, no drop location. A ransom note that
I agree with you, but this ain't nothing we already didn't say. That this whole thing could have been planned. Right? They panicked. They're putting out stuff. They're not answering nothing. Families communicating. The authorities saying they had no idea that the family was even communicating in a hostage situation or with anybody. But yet the family was already communicating with these people. But then the government said they didn't know that at first. You know, I don't know. Something's up. Now a lot of people are saying cover up, but who they covering up for? You know, who they covering up for? Some people are saying a ring of people. I would guess it'd be more than one person. And you know, yeah, it's very well possible they didn't do anything to her. And just her being moved around and jostled, you know, manhandled, could have broke up blood vessels or blood clots in her body. Numerous things. You know, she's bleeding. Well, now her blood is very thin, like water. So if she starts bleeding, you better apply pressure and hope to God it stops. Debbie Fox says they still don't have anything. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
cannot be replied to is not a ransom. It's a statement. A second communication arrived later, then silence. The FBI confirmed as of mid-February they were aware of no ongoing communication between the Guthrie family and any kidnapper. The The ransom deadlines passed, the demands dropped, and then nothing. If Gould's 72-hour timeline is correct, those notes were sent after Nancy was already gone. They weren't demands, they were cover. Now the distance. And this is where Gould's assessment stops being one man's opinion and starts looking like something the evidence has been whispering since week one. Historically, victims of abductions are frequently found in relatively close proximity, 2 to 5 miles. Nancy's body will likely be found within a few miles of her home. 2 to 5 miles. Let me show you what's inside that radius. The FBI recovered black gloves approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home, in a field near a roadside. Those gloves appeared visually consistent with the ones the masked suspect wore in the doorbell footage. DNA was extracted, unknown male, no match in the FBI's CODIS database. Sheriff Nanos said, I have gloves.
But here's the problem with that, sir. 16 pairs of gloves reported, and that was 3 weeks after she came up missing. It took you 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks, they could have planted hundreds of gloves out there. For one, you didn't bring even a dog on site to track the house to maybe that glove. So many weeks went by before you discovered these gloves. 2 miles down the road, no one's seen them before. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, now these gloves are all over the place. Come on. Come on. And what kind of idiot would leave 16 pairs of gloves if that's true?
5 miles away, 10 miles away, so we prioritize. The 2-mile gloves got tested first. That tells you where investigators think the answer is. A Ring camera approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy's home captured 12 vehicles passing between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st. Some passed around 2:30 a.m. within 2 minutes of the pacemaker's last signal. The FBI reviewed that footage. It was deemed not a viable lead, but they were looking at 2.5 miles. Not 50 miles, not the Mexican border.
All right, if you notice something, what's passing through here? If it ain't a white car, it's dark color cars. That's all you see running up and down this road is either they're white, silver, which could appear white if the light hits it just right. Like my car, I got the Ford Fusion with the diamond metallic or whatever in it, and sometimes it appears it appears to look different in the light. But what do we see coming up and down this street all night? If white cars and dark color cars, numerous times down this road.
2.5 miles on February 13th, day 13, and there was a major law enforcement surge approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. A lead generated a search warrant. Multiple people were detained. One man was released and told the reporters, I hope they get the suspect because I'm not it. No arrests. But the search warrant was served 2 miles out. The Pima County Sheriff's Department canvassed residents within a 2-mile radius for home security footage. They asked for recordings going all the way back to January 1st, a full month before the abduction. That request tells you investigators believe someone was operating in that area for weeks before Nancy was taken. And here's the revelation that connects the distance to the planning. ABC News was first to report, confirmed by CNN, Fox News Digital, and CBS News, that the masked suspect was captured on Nancy's doorbell camera on 2 different days. One image, suspect with the backpack and holstered weapon the night of the abduction. A separate image, same suspect, same door without the backpack on a prior date. CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence
See, this is why I speculate with the one detective where he says he believes she died 72 hours after being taken. That's probably true. He's probably right about that. If she didn't have her medication, whatever, if it even occurred, or did this happen 72 hours before? I would look on that camera and see how many times and how many days before this occurred, before this, that this guy is showing up on camera. Because it's possible. We don't know. Like I said, all they would need is Miss Guthries' phone, her Apple Watch, and her heart monitor that was on her chest with a sticker, supposedly, if it's true, what they say. Mrs. Guthries didn't have to be there. We said that numerous times. There, this might all happen before, and what we're seeing is a robbery, maybe possibly, or making it appear to be a robbery or something possibly.
Analyst John Miller, former NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism, former FBI Assistant Director, called it pre-operational surveillance reconnaissance. The suspect was in that neighborhood before February 1st. If he also disposed of Nancy within the radius Gould describes, then the entire crime, the scouting, the execution, and the aftermath happened inside a 5-mile circle around Nancy Guthrie's front door. The DNA from the property was mixed, more than one person, making it harder to run through databases. The Pima County Sheriff's Department said its contracted lab in Florida is continuing to analyze the samples, but has not reached a conclusion on whether the profiles are even usable for comparison. Investigators are now pursuing genetic genealogy, the same technique that identified the Golden State Killer after decades of dead ends. You don't need the suspect's DNA in a criminal database. You put it into open source genealogy databases, find even a distant relative, build a family tree, and narrow the pool. It takes time. It takes a usable profile, but it has cracked cases that were cold for 40 years. Forensic scientist Peter Valentine, chair of the Forensic.
Why does that look like the comedian that was married to Roseanne Barr? What the hell are we seeing? Is that Tom Arnold? I can't believe this.
Science Department at the University of New Haven argued the case may depend on evidence beyond DNA. If people went into that home and took her, there must be evidence of their presence in that home. Where is it? He called for a focus on hair, fibers, and trace materials that investigators may have overlooked.
Guthrie family. And to be clear, it's not like they didn't investigate everyone within that very tight circle, I'm sure, probably first.
And they did, but that is that's by rote. I mean, when you have a homicide or a crime, the first place you start is in the home. Who was the last person to see her? What are the family dynamics? Does anyone have a motive? Basically, it's to get that out of the way, and it may pan out, but then you have to move on to other things.
You know, Jonathan, we were listening to these profilers and Brian Todd's piece. How often it's something like that? Maybe not the hard DNA match or a witness, but looking at behavior that leads to a break in the case.
It could be everything, right? It could be, someone looking at the way the suspect turned or the way that they presented themselves. There's all these little things. I mean, something as minute as that position of the gun in the holster in the front. To me, that's an intimidation factor, right? You're telegraphing that you are armed. We've talked about the gun in the holster. It's not tactical. It's not the right.
That's another thing that I tried to point out to these people. Why would he let you see he has a weapon? He's trying to hide everything with leaves. Why would he even walk up with a weapon? Especially when there's blood left behind. That's what I'm saying. None of this is adding up. It's too crazy. Well, he's trying to intimidate people. Well, if he's just a robber, do you really think he would be waving a gun around? I don't know. That just seems kind of weird to me, folks.
I think, but we're not the audience. Nancy Guthrie was the audience there. So
2 miles for the gloves, 2 miles for the search warrant, 2.5 miles for the ring camera, 2 miles for the canvas, and Gould says 2 to 5 miles for the answer. Now, if Gould is right that Nancy
Here's my thing. If Nancy had her phone hooked up and she could see this stuff or even hear someone trying to break into the house, don't you think she would have called 911? She supposedly had a dog. But people are saying now, what happened to the dog? So this whole thing ain't making sense, right? Now they're saying that her camera wasn't hooked up. Her Nest camera or whatever. It was still filming. She was getting messages saying that there was someone walking around her house outside on her phone. Don't you think this little old lady, if she was scared, would have called 911?
died within 72 hours, and if the evidence points within 5 miles, then what was this? What was the plan? 3 independent experts answered that question without coordinating. Tracy Walder is a former FBI special agent and former CIA officer. On the Brian Enton Investigates podcast,
They always get the beautiful ones. CIA and FBI. That's to infiltrate us idiot men. Because we fold under pressure when it comes to women and their hotness. And you know what? This lady might have had to sleep with some men to keep her cover. Or maybe just to make sure no one thought she was a CIA operative or FBI. Why couldn't I be that lucky? I don't know. It's always the beautiful.
she analyzed the suspect's backpack, which appeared full, stiff, puffed out in the doorbell footage. She said, I think just my hypothesis that he is arriving with things to subdue her, maybe even blankets or tarps to put her in. She continued, I don't want to seem overly morbid or graphic, but things like zip ties, tape, things to subdue her. That's what I think is in the backpack. She said she definitely does not think this was a burglary. In a burglary, we don't tend to see them taking a victim with them. That just tends to not be the case because it bogs them down. And she offered a motive. I do think that was someone that was either upset with something Savannah Guthrie had done or had some obsession with her. And that's why they targeted this family. It's just too targeted. This is not a house that you just come upon.
I don't know what to say or whatever, but I don't know what this black thing is here. I don't know if that's some kind of a pot or something on the ground here, this huge black thing. And it looks like there's a light or something, a glass or something down here. That almost looks like a bag or a suitcase or something. Don't it? Is anyone out there that's in chat? Does that look like a suitcase? That looks like a suitcase to me. Maybe not. Maybe it's a pot holder or something for a plant or something. Yeah, I think it's a plant holder pot.
Decide to rob. It's just not that. Crime scene investigator Cheryl McCollum on Fox News said, if you look at him, he's got a backpack that is filled. Well, that's not a home invasion. You do a home invasion because there's drugs there, there's money there, there's valuables. He doesn't have an empty backpack to fill it. She added that if
I also want to point out to FBI, CIA, and Homeland, if you look at this photo over here if you're looking directly into the screen, that would be on your left side, the bottom one. If you look at the sleeves around his arm, look at all baggy and everything, right? Not perfectly round and everything. But look at the second photo when he comes back. He comes up, he leaves, and he comes back a couple times, right? Look at when he comes back, he's trying to do something. I think this is when he's trying to cover the camera or whatever. I think everything's well, anyways, look at his sleeve. Look how round and perfect his forearms are. And here it's not. It's all wrinkly and loose. But then he comes back and look at it's perfectly round. It's almost like he's got something in his forearms. Underneath the jacket.
Nancy had been harmed during a burglary, she would be right there dead in that
Or
house.
two jackets on.
Nancy wasn't in the house. She was taken. Walder also analyzed the object in the suspect's pocket. She leaned toward a walkie-talkie used to coordinate with a getaway driver. She said the suspect likely carried no cell phone. I think we would have him by now if he did. No phone, no digital trail, walkie-talkie communication, a pre-packed backpack with restraint tools, prior surveillance of the property, a weapon, a plan, digital forensics expert Heather.
See, when I look at this, I see blood splatter up here next to the mat. More than what we're seeing in this stuff. They're showing real close to the door. But it almost appears like possibly a blood trail already at the very end brick, one over from the end entry. Now, could this stuff have been cleaned up before they left or something? Maybe. And only left a little bit of blood? I don't know, maybe.
A pre-packed backpack with restraint tools, prior surveillance of the property, a weapon, a plan, digital forensics expert Heather Barnhart, who worked the Koberger case and holds certifications from Celebrite and the SANS Institute, explained that investigators analyze cell tower data for anomalous phone behavior around crime scenes. The FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey team has been combing through data across the area around Nancy's neighborhood. But if the suspect left his phone behind, as Walder believes, that entire investigative avenue goes dark. No pings, no movement data, no trace of where the suspect went after leaving that porch. That's not the behavior of a burglar who panicked. That's counter surveillance. The deliberate elimination of electronic footprints by someone who understood before they arrived that signals would be the first thing investigators would trace. Retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffin Daffer saw the same operational pattern.
Well, chat, mods, I think we got this case right too. Some of it of what's going down now, I think the big dogs have been listening to some of the YouTubers. And
when the two-visit revelation broke, she posted publicly that the suspect seems like a Brian Kohberger type. Kohberger, convicted of murdering 4 University of Idaho students, scouted the victim's home before the attack. The structural pattern is identical. Survey the target, study the security system, return with specific tools, execute. And the target of that execution was an 84-year-old woman who could not survive 24 hours without her heart medication. That is the collision Gould's 72 hours describes. A meticulously planned abduction that crashed into a medical reality the planner didn't account for or didn't care about. The suspect packed tools for a living hostage, but the hostage's body had a clock, and that clock didn't care about the plan. There is a tension at the center of this case that I need to address directly. On March
I don't know, maybe it was a robbery. You know, if they were tracking her account, if they hacked her, whatever. If they seen photos of her and she always had jewelry on or whatever, they might have, they might have mistaken this blue diamond here as the Hope Diamond. That was in like Titanic and everything that was lost in the sea, which was never found because people called off the search. So anyone that found the Hope Diamond, it's rightfully ours.
Or didn't care about. The suspect packed tools for a living hostage, but the hostage's body had a clock, and that clock didn't care about the plan. There is a tension at the center of this case that I need to address directly. On March 2nd, Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC News he personally believes Nancy is alive. He said investigators are getting closer. On the same day, Michael Gould said she likely died within 72 hours. Both cannot be true. Nanos has access to evidence Gould does not. Classified tips, full forensic reports, unreleased footage, interview transcripts. It is possible he knows something. Maybe there's a credible sighting. Maybe there's evidence Nancy received medical attention somewhere. But the public evidence tells a different story. No proof of life in 31 days. Not a photograph, not a recording, not a single written word. Savannah begged on camera. We need to know without a doubt that she's alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen.
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
Nobody answered. In every legitimate kidnapping where the victim is alive, proof of life is the kidnapper's most valuable currency. The silence is not just unusual. In the context of Gould's assessment, it is the silence that says everything. The FBI deployed a signal sniffer on a helicopter, flying slow and low.
Well, you would have to get pretty low, I think, because it's not going to be a very powerful signal. It's just a pacemaker. I would have to think you might have to get around a handheld one, or you're going to have to get pretty dang low. You have to get pretty dang low. Flying around in a helicopter 200 feet off the ground, I don't know, 400 feet, or I don't know if that thing will send off a signal that far. I'm not sure. I mean, it's going to send off a signal, but it's not no powerhouse where it's going to. I don't know. I might be wrong. It don't send off a radio signal. It sends off an electrocution. right? It just sparks the heart back to keep it in rhythm, right? So I don't know how good this is going to work. Is it possible or what? Well, it could, but not if you're flying real high in the sky. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But then again, we don't know. They could have her underground. They could have this whole thing planned. We don't know. Now people are saying she's gone. Well, I don't know if this little lady was worth a lot of money and people put time into this. And it is a cartel that's got tons of money to blow. Yeah, she could be alive, but you would have to have that medication.
Trying to detect Nancy's pacemaker, they didn't find her. The 13,000 tips have not produced a suspect. The DNA may not yield a usable profile. The FBI has moved most personnel from Tucson to Phoenix. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has refocused resources to detectives specifically assigned to this case. Retired FBI agent Maureen O'Connell said the case won't go cold because of the $1 million reward. She suggested an accomplice could claim the reward through a cooperation deal. If we put ourselves in the minds of the perpetrators here, they're like, we can't say anything. We're going to go to prison, O'Connell said on the Brian Enton Investigates podcast. Yeah, one person's going to go to prison, but we all know if the accomplice comes forward and gives up the guy, there's a really good chance he can get off and get $1 million.
We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves.
Are you hearing that? Are you hearing that voice? It sounds like a pitch shifter. Are you hearing her talk, though? It's sounding robotic. You can hear that echo in the back, a deeper echo when she talks. So let's play it again.
Chance he can get off and get $1 million.
Listen.
We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home.
Hear how
Hope
gargly
against
it
hope.
is?
As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves.
Something's fishy here. Something ain't adding up here. That voice sounds weird. Almost sounds like a filter or something on a voice pitcher.
I was dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad and with her beloved brother Pierce and with our daddy. If this is what is to be, then we will accept it. But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million.
I'm hearing two voices. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm hearing two voices.
she pointed out the accomplice likely wasn't going to get anywhere near that amount from whoever planned the operation. He was probably going to get, who knows, if people do this kind of stuff for $2,500. The sheriff's department has said they are not assuming he acted alone. That language matters. It tells you investigators believe there is at least one other person out there who knows what happened. Every thread is being pulled. The backpack, identified as a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack sold exclusively at Walmart for less than $11, is being traced through purchase records going back several. On day 24, she said the words no child should ever have to say. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves and is dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad and her beloved brother Pierce and with our daddy. She said, if this is what is to be, then we will all accept it. And then she announced the reward. The word she used was recovery, not rescue, recovery. That word, from a woman who has chosen her words for a living on national television for 2 decades, is not accidental, Gould noticed. He told the Mirror US, the reward reflects the reality that investigators are likely running out of credible leads and that the family has heartbreakingly accepted that Nancy may be deceased. And then he said something I think every person watching this needs to hear. Hope and prayer are human and necessary, but facts matter. At some point, families are forced to reconcile hope with evidence. That shift in tone reflects acceptance of the facts, not a loss of love or effort. Not a loss of love, not a loss of effort, an acceptance of facts. Today is day 31. Michael Gould, a retired detective who founded the NYPD's K-9 unit and spent his career recovering the missing, says Nancy Guthrie likely died within 72 hours. He says her body will likely be found within 2 to 5 miles of her home. He says this is no longer a rescue mission, it is a recovery mission.
We have shut down our search and rescue mission. We don't see this as a search mission as much as we do a crime scene.
He said something else that I haven't mentioned yet about the ransom notes, about the $6 million demand sent to TMZ, about the communications that stopped as suddenly as they started. He told the Mirror US, the family clearly has the financial means to pay a ransom if one were legitimate. The absence of proof of life and the manner of communication tells me this was never a credible ransom situation. Never a credible ransom situation. From a man who has seen real ones. He believes the notes were fraudulent. He believes there was never going to be a negotiation because there was never a living hostage to negotiate for. That is the hardest sentence in this entire script. And I don't know if it's true. I hope it's not. A former FBI agent and CIA officer says this was a targeted abduction, not a burglary, driven by obsession with or anger toward Savannah. A forensic crime scene investigator says the full backpack proves the suspect came to take a person, not rob a house. A cardiologist says stopping certain heart medications abruptly can be immediately life-threatening. And the sheriff himself said on day 4 that going without Nancy's medication for more than 24 hours could be fatal. That was 27 days ago. Every piece of physical evidence, the gloves at 2 miles, the search warrant at 2 miles, the ring camera at 2.5 miles, the canvas at 2 miles, falls inside the radius Gould described. 2 to 5 miles. Everything points inward. Everything points close. I don't know who is right. I hope the sheriff is. I hope Nancy is alive somewhere, and I hope the $1.2 million reward, anonymous, payable in cash, brings someone forward tonight, tomorrow, or next week, because
Well, all the suspects that they named, all of them lived around Nancy within miles, except for one, Carlos. Carlos was 40, 50 miles away. And she might be 50 miles away from there. Anywhere from 5 to 50 miles. Yeah, it's possible. Somewhere else. I don't know. If she passed away, she could have bled out. That's what they're not telling everybody is if she was bleeding and on blood thinners, there's a good chance they couldn't stop bleeding. They might have panicked and why won't she stop bleeding? It's possible. All right, so this is another video that was out. It's almost done. Let's finish watching the rest.
Somebody knows. An accomplice, a neighbor, someone who sold a backpack at Walmart, someone who saw a car at 2:30 Estates in the morning near the Catalina foothills, someone who noticed a person in that neighborhood who didn't belong there in January. Harvey Levin of TMZ said the FBI.
Here's what's weird. She's surrounded by houses. We know this house has got a camera. We know the all these houses around here. You got a house over here. You got a house here. You got a house back here. You got a house right over here. You got a house here. And here's her house around all of them. And you're telling me you got no footage of. You got there's 1, 2, 3. I think there's another house back here. 4. Then you got a house across the street over here where the chat is, where I'm moving my pointer to. Then you got a house back here. And these are rich homes, right? Usually these people, and they're older, right? They got them Ring cameras and stuff, right? And you're telling me you ain't got no footage of anything? You got no footage of her leaving there that day or returning? You got no footage of that showing to people with a timestamp on it of this happening that night, other than her own ringtone that other people had knew about? And no one's got nothing of nothing. I don't know.
The Catalina foothills, someone who noticed a person in that neighborhood who didn't belong there in January. Harvey Levin of TMZ said the FBI told him it just takes that one person who opens their mouth and the case cracks wide open. The ransom notes have gone silent. The FBI confirmed no ongoing communication between the family and any kidnapper. 31 days of silence. But on March 2nd, Savannah, Annie, and Tomas Sato walked arm in arm to a makeshift memorial outside Nancy's home. They laid flowers. They read messages from strangers praying for a woman they've never met. Savannah said, "We feel the love and prayers from our neighbors, from the Tucson community, and from around the country. Please don't stop praying and hoping with us." The truth about what happened to Nancy Guthrie, where she is, who took her, and what happened in the 72 hours after 2:28 a.m. on February 1st, that truth exists inside someone's memory right now, inside someone's conscience. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Tips can be anonymous, no ID required. The reward can be paid in cash. One phone call, that's all it takes. Disclaimer. This video is commentary and analysis based on publicly available information and on-the-record expert opinions. It does not declare Nancy Guthrie deceased. No proof of life or death has been established. Michael Gould is a retired Nassau County lieutenant and founder of the NYPD K-9 unit. If you have information about this case, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI.
We have always gone our own way with herbs. That's nature's way, uncompromising in the way we test and test and test.
All individuals are presumed innocent. There is a detail in this case that once you hear it, you will never look at the Nancy Guthrie coverage the same way again. It's not the blood on the doorstep. You already know about that. It's not the masked man with the gun on the doorbell camera. You've seen the footage. It's not the ransom notes that nobody can verify. It's not the pacemaker that stops sinking. It's not the backpack from Walmart. It's not the fact that 31 days have passed and there is still no suspect, no arrest, and no proof of life. It's not any of that. It's something much simpler, something that has been sitting in the public record since February 17th, something that every journalist in America had access to, something that not a single one of them caught. There are two sons-in-law in this family. One of them, a high school biology teacher, was called a prime suspect on national television within 72 hours. His car was towed. His home was searched. His life was destroyed. He was later cleared. He was innocent the entire time. The other one, and this is the part you need to hear, the other one didn't show up in Tucson until day 17. 17 days after his mother-in-law was taken, and when he finally arrived at the airport, a photographer asked him about the case, and he said 3 words that should have stopped every newsroom in the country. He said he felt mostly unhelpful, mostly unhelpful, about his own kidnapped mother-in-law on day 17. Now, that's a strange thing for anyone to say, but it becomes a very different thing when you learn what this man does for a living. He didn't teach biology. He spent 8 years in the Clinton-Gore White House. He co-founded a crisis communications firm with the former White House press secretary. He is the North American co-chairman of one of the largest PR firms on the planet. He has spent 30 years, his entire adult life, professionally training the most powerful people in the world on exactly what to say when everything falls apart. Mostly unhelpful isn't grief. It's a talking point. And not one journalist in 31 days has asked him a single follow-up question. Not one. While the biology teacher's life was burned to the ground on every screen in America. Same family, same case, 2 completely different rules, and nobody is talking about it. Until right now. Nancy Guthrie has 2 daughters. You know their names. Annie Guthrie, the poet and jeweler who lives in Tucson near her mother, and Savannah Guthrie, the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. Annie married Tommaso Cioni. He's Italian-born, moved to Tucson in 2006. He teaches AP biology. He plays electric bass in a local band. An old bio of his says he studies lizards and makes homemade pasta. His LinkedIn says he's been at the same school for more than 15 years. Savannah married Michael Feldman, and this is where I need you to pay very close attention. Michael Feldman was born on October 14th, 1968. He graduated from Tufts University in 1990 with a degree in political science. He didn't go into teaching. He went to the United States Senate, first as a floor assistant in the Senate cloakroom, then as a legislative analyst for the Senate Democratic Policy Committee. In 1991, he worked on Senator Harris Wofford's special election campaign in Pennsylvania. In 1992, he joined Bill Clinton's presidential campaign. After Clinton won...
Yep. She's probably as good as gone. Well, we knew Slick Billy Willie is somewhere in there. All right. Yeah, this just gets this is just more crazier than ever. Do we even dare go on with any more of this? Probably not. What are we at? An hour and 18 minutes? I'm done with all that. You know, you start throwing in government and secret ops and all that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now the next thing, you know, it's an ongoing case. Still open. And I keep telling people, no one has been cleared. They can tell you you're cleared all day long. They can tell you you're clear for 6, 7 years. And then that one day they come knocking on your door. Hello? Yeah, it's the sheriff's department. Remember that thing, that incident 6 years ago? Yeah. Seems you weren't cleared. So, yeah. So this just keep, and now the government's involved. This guy, we'll never find out the truth. I wouldn't doubt it if she was held hostage by our own government. No, if they had information on old Slick Willie and the Pinkies, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. This is just crazy. All right, I think I'm gonna end this. I don't even want to get into this. I don't want to have nightmares over this. Government involved, ex-presidents' names, even the recent president. I guess Trump and Savannah Guthrie didn't like each other. Very hostile interview or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? It has nothing to do with us. You folks have a great night. Is it possible she passed away faster than 72 hours? Yep. It's also possible she passed 72 hours before this. We're not sure. We don't have all the answers. God does. Let's look to God to solve this case. In Jesus' name, amen. You folks have a great night. I'm getting off this contraption. I'll be back.